according to Colossians and also Ephesians. So obviously perverted jokes shouldn't be coming out of our mouths. And it's a classic, but just ask yourself, what would Jesus do? Would he laugh? Would he make this joke? Stomping on my own toes here. Realistically, he's probably...
See, I don't really like that one. You're like contemplating, should I make this dead baby joke? I don't know. I really want to be edgy. Okay, I want to drop some dark humor. Should I do it? Okay, What would Jesus do? He'd probably start multiplying fishes or something. I don't fucking know. What would Christ do in this case? Like, that's not really very helpful.
Just represent life, not death. And on top of that, what if you go up to somebody's door and they're a witch, or they pray, cursings over the food? I know that's random and probably not realistic, but still.
What if I go to knock at the door, okay, and first of all, I'm not dressed as a dinosaur, so I'm already really exposed, and then the local neighborhood witch opens the door, and you see her go, abracadabra, ushkamala, and she casts an evil spell onto the candy. Next thing I know, I eat it, I pass out, I go unconscious, and I cannot wake until I'm kissed by a beautiful, handsome prince, okay? Who knows? Who knows the power of Satan? Somebody sent me this TikTok, so I thought we would kick it off, okay? Old school, by reviewing a TikTok that was reviewing my video, and I noticed they got over 12,000 likes, so sounds relevant enough for me to talk about.
I know that my mom does believe that if I were to die, that I would go to hell and would be suffering for eternity.
So I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this video. There's a lot that I could address. I'm not going to go through the whole spiel of, explaining heaven and hell and stuff like that. There's a lot to it. Instead, I'm just going to address the 2 points here that he makes. Mainly 2 questions.
Heaven, there is no suffering and there is no sorrow. But how is it?
All right, let's see what he says. I'm excited. Apparently, this guy has a Christian podcast, too, so hopefully there's a better answer here than some of the standard Christian responses.
Then that my mom could be in heaven with the knowledge that I am burning in hell for all of eternity and not be sad or sorrowful.
So Jesus describes hell as an outer darkness, and we know that God is light. So have you ever been inside your house, it's late at night, and you look outside, but it's so dark outside and it's so light inside that you can't see outside, you can't see anything outside? But whereas if you're outside looking in at night and you look into a house that is full of light, then if you're outside, you can look into it and see what's inside. We actually see this premise play out in Luke 16. And so the rich man looks up over the great chasm into heaven and sees his servant Lazarus. But it doesn't seem like Lazarus can look down into the darkness that is Hades or Sheol or hell that the rich man is in. So in heaven, we'll be so enriched by the glory that is God's light that we won't even be able to entertain the idea or the thought of darkness, things that occur in.
So the memory of past relationships will be stripped from you. That's what you're saying right now, just in a fancier way. In a fancy way, he is saying that, oh, well, when you go to heaven, there will be no suffering because you will just no longer have the knowledge that your loved one or your child is in hell burning for all of eternity. That's comforting. Okay, so we're going to be free. We also will have memories, but we just won't have the ability to know that people we love and try to reach out to are burning in hell for all of eternity? That doesn't sound very good. It sounds like, again, this is what I said in the video, if you are stripped of that knowledge, or in this case, stripped of the ability to feel suffering or sad because a loved one is in hell, then you are no longer my mom. You are no longer that person in that person's fullest sense, because you have been stripped of memories, of the ability to feel pain. You have been stripped of certain aspects of the human experience.
We're in the darkness. We won't be able to see outside of the house at night. You see what I'm saying?
Then it begs the question, is she even my mom anymore? Because that is a massive part of what it means to be a human.
This might sound insensitive, but spiritually speaking, you're not the center of her world. When she gets to heaven, her sole purpose is the glorification of God. She cares about nothing more. And some people might hear...
What? So... Okay, wait, he's acting like he's debunking me when in reality he's just saying I'm correct. My mom is no longer going to have the knowledge that I'm suffering in hell, so she's not even going to have that memory anymore, and she's going to be just fully consumed by glorifying God, so she's going to be like a robot. No feelings, no emotions, no ability to feel sorrowful that her son is perishing and burning in hell, but instead just... I worship God. I worship God. So she goes to heaven to become an NPC It's like
When she
Doctor
gets to
Who.
heaven, her sole purpose is the glorification of God. She cares about it.
Also, I thought that our sole purpose on earth is the glorification of God. So are you saying our purpose on earth is to glorify God so that we can be rewarded by more glorifying God? Really? For an all-powerful deity, he sure really needs a lot of worship. God seems incredibly insecure, honestly.
Nothing more. And some people might hear that and be like, that doesn't sound like a good heaven. And to them, I would say, well, you're obviously not a Christian, because as Christians, we're trying really hard right now to glorify God in all that we do, but yet we fail because of our flesh. And so when we get to heaven, it will be our sole purpose to glorify God in a perfect way throughout all of eternity. And it is extraordinary. And Christians, we strive for that. We long for that. And if you don't long for that, then maybe your heart's not aligned. It's not right. You're not Christian. But that is a Christian's perfect idea of heaven, is to glorify God in everything in a perfect way.
Is that really like the Christian's perfect idea of heaven? I just long for the day in which all I do, every waking moment, is spent singing Amazing Grace. Okay, that song is so gorgeous. I just want to wake up and sing the fuck out of that song. That is what my purpose is. But according to this guy, again, it sounds like you just become like a robot in heaven. You become God's little bot. God's special AI, designed for nothing more than to worship him. Does the Bible say heaven no suffering? He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Okay, so yeah. No sorrow. So, okay, cool. So in order for there to be no sorrow, you have to literally be stripped of the knowledge that you have children, or that anything happened in this current world, or that people you love are apparently burning in hell for all of eternity because God failed to provide adequate evidence of his existence. All of that's going to be stripped away so that you can be made into a mindless robot who praises God all day, every day.
So is she your mom anymore? It really just depends on how you define your mom. If you define your mom as the being with which she is, then yes. But if you define your mom as...
No, the being in which she is includes the ability to feel emotion and pain and empathy for people she loves.
As the person who has the flaws that she has, then no. Because when she gets to heaven, she will be perfected and she will be flawless.
So you're saying in order to be perfected, you lose the ability to feel sadness and empathy for people you love. That's your idea of perfection? He's just reiterating what I said, but in a long-winded way. Yeah, she's been stripped of the ability to feel pain and emotion and sadness, so she has lost an aspect of the human experience. Is she really my mom anymore? You're saying your idea of perfection is the lack of ability to even feel emotion or remember people you love? This sounds awful.
And so she won't be who you know her to be on earth. She will be perfected. So let's say you become a Christian, you end up going to heaven with her. You don't hold the title of mother, son in heaven, because we know titles are gone in heaven, because I will not be married to my wife in heaven, as Jesus says. And so if the title...
Wow, this is great. So not only does heaven encompass losing the ability to feel empathy, being made into a mindless Doctor Who robot that spends all day worshiping God, you also will no longer be married. Your family will be broken up. Man, God is the little homewrecker over here. Listen, God, you clever bastard.
Titleship of mother and son is not there, then what are we? We are all just the bride of Christ at that point. So all of our title is either child of God or bride of Christ. And then you mentioned how your mother wouldn't be human anymore.
Why do I only have to pick between child or bride? What about like God's manservant? Why do I have to be child? That's kind of weird. Why do I have to be bride? I don't think you can tell me that God is against trans people anymore if we're supposed to be the bride.
Christ. And then you mentioned how your mother wouldn't be human anymore. She'd be like a carbon copy. That's kind of the point, to leave behind our human nature and become our spiritual being, a perfect being.
Okay, that's the point, guys. The point of heaven is to be a carbon copy, stripped away of your ability to feel empathy. That's what perfection means, according to this Christian. Okay, wow. My mind has been blown. Oh, I long for the day in which I can be in heaven where I will no longer be me. Oh, yes. Actually, you know what? Coming from somebody who hates himself, that actually does sound kind of pleasant. But generally speaking, the concept, holy shit. How do I reach out to this guy? Because I'm going to ask him to debate. I'm kind of sad. This is what I mean, by the way, is when I'm like, okay, this is a big Christian, a big boy Christian, okay? I'm in for it. I'm finally going to hear an argument that just knocks my socks off and I'm just unable to adequately respond. And then suddenly I need to get down on my knees and become a Christian. And then every time it's just nah. They're like, yeah, actually, Hunter, you're right. But you see, being a carbon copy of yourself is the good thing. Does this guy do any other videos?
I know that my mom does.
And the age of accountability is an interesting concept because it's not necessarily a biblical concept, but it is in line with God's character. So here's what I would say about the age of accountability. If your child is able to understand the concept of death, they are self-aware enough to understand that Christ paid the penalty for them.
Are you kidding me right now? That is incredibly disturbing of him to say, considering the fact that my daughter, who is 3 years old, has a general understanding of death. Is so much so that she knows that like my grandparents have died, or she knows that like animals have died, but she is not to the awareness to the same extent that like she's able to think like, will I die one day? But she's able to understand, generally speaking, that like death is a thing. Things die, and when they do, they're gone forever. You're saying because she has that understanding that she should therefore have an understanding of Christ, which literally means this follows logically that if a 3-year-old girl with that understanding were to die, then she would go to hell. That's what this guy, the follow through here of this fucking asinine logic is that a goddamn 3-year-old, so long as they know what it is to die or what it's like or that people die, that they are old enough to be accountable for their sins, which means if they died, they would go to hell. God would cast a 3-year-old into hell, which isn't actually, if we want to talk about God's character, that in and of itself is not really all that shocking, considering the fact that God deliberately commanded King Saul to slaughter that village where he deliberately said to kill the infants. Let's go ahead and look that one up just for a, little Bible study here, okay? Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you as king. So listen now to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. So yeah, maybe it's not actually that surprising that according to God's character, he would send a 3-year-old child to hell.
For example, if you go up to your kid and say, hey, Grandpa Johnny died, and they just keep on playing with their toy and they have no remorse, then they don't understand the concept of death quite yet. I think that's a pretty good gauge for their self-awareness.
No, it's not. My daughter gets sad anytime I tell her anything dies, even if it's a fucking flower that died. Okay? But that doesn't mean that they have a full concept of like eternity and sin and all these ideas that are fed to you from Christianity. And this is literally verbatim the problem that I have. The educating tiny children that one day they're going to be tortured for all of eternity if they don't turn away from their wicked ways. You stole your fruit snacks from Johnny, all right? Turn or burn, kid. That is exactly the bullshit that I'm so adamantly against. This is the kind of teaching, by the way, that fucked me up as a child. If they feel sad, you realize they could feel sad because they like have a general understanding that like someone dying means that like they go away and they're not coming back and they're sad about that, but they don't have like a full grasp of what it means to die and like how we deal with that and whatnot. This is just despicable, actually.
Awareness. But there are also people that are like 30 years old, but they have the mind of say a 6-year-old. So I think that if somebody cannot comprehend the idea that Jesus died to save us at our core, then I don't think that God's going to hold them against something that they couldn't have.
God takes all things into account, exposure to biblical truth included. God will judge those who study the Bible harder than those who heard the name of Jesus one time. Okay, so then the moral and ethical thing to do would be to never, ever spread the gospel. And even more so would be to, and I'm not kidding, if this is true, the ethical thing to do would be to censor Christianity to the highest extent. The answer here would be burn and ban all Bibles. Do not let anybody hear the name of Christ even. Let them live in total ignorance, because if they hear the name of Jesus, then they have suddenly been given or exposed to certain levels of biblical truths, which then mean that they are subject to God's fiery judgment. So you realize if that's true, then the ethical thing to do would unironically be censor Christianity. Do not talk about it. You will go to prison if you so much as fucking utter the words Jesus Christ, because you spreading that, you are just making it so that more people are at a risk for hell. Why would you ever evangelize to like foreign tribes or anything?
God is all knowing, full of grace, and knows our heart's intentions.
That was a really bad video. Oh shit. I hope this guy gets back to me. This is a Christian podcast. Come on. I feel like all the Christian arguments I hear are either just abysmal and embarrassing, and you can poke holes in it easily, or it's some like deep philosophical thing that's so hard to understand. There's no way that can be the only way to discover God, because if that were the case, then people who do not have the intellectual ability to go in depth in philosophical concepts would then be going to hell or wouldn't be able to discover God. Bruh. If you abandon your faith today, how would your life look tomorrow? Okay, let's see.
Here's a hard question for Christians. If you abandon your faith today, how would your life look tomorrow? Would it look any different?
Well, I abandoned my faith a while ago, and my life has only gotten significantly better. Of course, I still have my struggles with mental illness and whatnot, and that's always going to be a thing that I need to deal with, of course. But at least it's more so freeing to no longer feel like I am being watched every goddamn minute, and that if I so much as have a bad thought, that means that I'm going to be possibly in trouble with God Almighty.
Like, truly self-reflect on that question. Now, after careful consideration, if you said something like, well, I'd have my Sunday mornings free, or, well, I'd have 10% more in my bank account, or you think...
Actually, yeah, that's true. That's another thing, too, is, yeah, you shouldn't have to donate 10% of your earnings to the church. You realize, guys, that's a biblical command, that you tithe 10% of your income to the church? It's so convenient, you know? Hey, guys, let's start a church, okay? Because we're a religious institution, we don't have to pay taxes. We're tax exempt. And conveniently, in our book, it says, give me money or else you are a sinner. You know what? It also says that in the Bible of Hunter Avallone. All you hoes watching, okay, all you disgusting heathens, now is your chance to save your ass from the eternal pit of hell. Donate to the stream, okay? You hate God, but you don't believe in. Are you trying to roast me right now? Oh, how can you hate something that doesn't exist? Yes, you got me, buddy. I'm wrecked. Oh no, I hate God, so I guess God does exist. Oh, George has checkmated me. All right, listen, curious George. Okay, you don't actually need to believe in God to still hate the concept of God that is posited by Christians that is oftentimes unethical and immoral as well. You know, that was one of the things that, like, one of the more practical things that started to bother me too was like the tithing thing. I would have to like just give some of my money to the church. And then there was times when like we wouldn't have a stable church because we were still looking for one. So I'd like have money that I would have to just donate to a church. It was just fucking stupid. Is dark humor sinful? Oh boy. Let's not sin, okay? No dark humor over here. Ooh. All right, let's make like Robin Williams and swing into this one.
Is dark humor sinful? Well, I mean, just like with any actions, I'm going to say that there's three categories that an action can fall into. It can be sinful, neutral, or glorifying to God. And so I think all humor falls in the neutral category, and so it could be glorifying to God or it could be sinful. So how do we know if humor is sinful since it's neutral?
Tell me.
Does it glorify God, the humor? Like if
Tell
a
me.
Christian's jokes about offing themselves, then no, that is not glorifying to God. I would say that
What? Come on. You're telling me as a Christian I can't even joke about how bad I want to kill myself? Really? Rules, rules, rules.
The category of personal conviction under sinful. If your joke is contrary to what God teaches about those individuals, so if it degrades a person, because we're made in the image of God, right? So if you're degrading a person, I don't think that that's probably the best joke. Perverted speech should stay out of our mouths.
Come on. Now I can't even insult people? Are you telling me God is against being a bully? Fucking hell.
According to Colossians and also Ephesians, so obviously perverted jokes shouldn't be coming out of our mouths. And it's a classic, but just ask yourself, what would Jesus do? Would he laugh? Would he make this joke? Stomping on my own toes here. Realistically, he's probably...
See, I don't really like that one. You're like contemplating, should I make this dead baby joke? I don't know. I really want to be edgy. Okay, I want to drop some dark humor. Should I do it? Okay, What would Jesus do? He'd probably start multiplying fishes or something. I don't fucking know. What would Christ do in this case? Like, that's not really very helpful. Thou shalt not sin by cracking a funny joke. If the joke is funny, then it's a sin. Okay? New rule. Let's see. What's another one? Should Christians do Halloween? Oh, this is great. When I was little, I did not do Halloween. Halloween was seen as very demonic and evil and whatnot. So I'm curious to know what he's going to say.
So if we as Christians are supposed to glorify God in all that we do, then how are we supposed to handle Halloween? Allow me to preface with this that these are just my thoughts and convictions, and not to force it on you, but just to share it. I think there's 3 categorical actions regarding glorifying.
Please bring up that the Bible says thou shalt not be a glutton, and so eating a lot of candy is a sin. Please.
God. The ones that don't, the ones that are neutral, and then the ones that do glorify God. So there's definitely a lot of nuance to this conversation. For example, if I were to wear a costume of a skeleton, something that represents death, that does not glorify God any day of the week. But if I want to dress up as a dinosaur, then that's...
Really? But how do you are glorifying God. You're showing the magnitude and the intricacy of the human body, which just speaks to the glory of God's amazing creation.
That's neither. That doesn't glorify God, but that doesn't dishonor him either. But as we all know, Halloween...
It might be dishonoring him. I think if you're going to dress up as a dinosaur, you should make sure that you have a human with you who can pretend to be like Adam or Eve or something. That way you're really making sure everybody knows that you believe in the 6,000-year-old Earth where humans and dinosaurs live together. You know, that would definitely be glorifying to God. Denying science, you know, that good stuff.
It's much more than dressing up, right? So I personally think that we should apply this line of questioning to every aspect of Halloween. Now, glorifying God in all that we do, that stems from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, where it says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. But in Romans 14, it says to not be...
Can somebody answer how the fuck you would shit for the glory of God? Is it like, oh no, the Taco Bell is hitting me really hard. Praise be to God that my rectum works? Like, how do you glorify God in all that you do, buddy?
Be a stumbling block for others. So if by participating in Halloween causes somebody to stumble, maybe they don't understand all the nuance of the conversation, then it'd be wise altogether to just not celebrate Halloween.
The nuanced Halloween question, the HQ, if you will.
You don't cause them to stumble. So is there harm in the action of trick-or-treating? Inherently, I'd say no. I'd say it's neutral. But like with all neutral actions, it depends on what you're doing to determine are you glorifying God or are you not. So if you're trick-or-treating as a zombie, I'm going to say no, that's not glorifying God. But if you're trick-or-treating as, say, a dinosaur, then I don't see an issue with that.
Are dinosaurs the only thing that is allowed under Christianity? Also, you said you can't be a skeleton because it represents death. You know dinos are dead, right? Is it just like you can't dress up as anything that has died? Oh, damn. You better not dress up as Jesus then. Oof.
We have to consider what we're supporting. By participating in a holiday, we are supporting what that holiday represents. So Halloween at its core...
Halloween is Satan's birthday.
The day to remember the dead. Google it. That's what it's for. And as Christians, we shouldn't...
No, that's kind of a genetic fallacy at this point. Like, Halloween does not still mean that. The Day of the Dead is a holiday traditionally celebrated on November 1st and 2nd through other days such as October 31st. It largely originated in Mexico, where it is mostly observed, but also in other places. El Dia de los Muertos is not, as is commonly thought, a Mexican version of Halloween, though the two holidays do share some traditions. On the Day of the Dead, it's believed that the border between the spirit world and the real world dissolve. Both include elaborate decorations, visuals, and costumes. Okay. So no, it doesn't even sound like it's actually the same thing, nor is American Halloween the same or even symbolic of the Day of the Dead. It's just not. They're two different things. Furthermore, wouldn't Christians actually be like more okay with that? They believe that people, when they die, go to heaven. Would it be that unbelievable then if you believe that there would be a day in which people who have passed on are able to come together with humans again? I mean, that's what happened in the Bible, right? When Jesus died, didn't dead saints rise up from the grave and march across Jerusalem? God is okay with zombies. He makes them, okay? You worship a zombie, okay? The guy who died and then rose again from the grave, you are following a zombie. This is like a common thing. Finally, like the Day of the Dead doesn't sound like it's anything even demonic. It sounds like it's literally just about remembering people who've died.
And as Christians, we shouldn't remember the dead like that. First,
why?
Thessalonians 4, talking about those who are asleep or dead, that you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. So as Christians, we shouldn't grieve because we have hope for them. Then in Ecclesiastes...
What? Dude, this is just getting better and better right now. How dare you sob at your own father's funeral, you sick fucking degenerate heathen? The Bible says don't grieve, okay? I better see you stoic as a rock while I kill your mom in front of you. Holy shit, you sinful bitch. Yeah, it's like you shouldn't remember the dead like that by having a tradition primarily in Mexico in which you remember people who have died in a way that's not usually demonic. But yet, according to the Bible, instead you should just be literally a stoic robot. You should be a machine. when you are at a funeral, okay? If you smush a bird with your bare hand, I don't care. You don't even so much as sniffle, or else God will slap your ass.
We shouldn't grieve because we have hope for them. Then in Ecclesiastes 9:5 it says, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten." So we should forget about the dead. Now this sounds...
What? Bro, stop. Please, stop. Stop. This dude walks through the Holocaust Museum and is like, ugh, why are we remembering them? They're dead. Why don't you forget them all? He's like at the memorial service for all the veterans who've sacrificed their lives for the country. Ugh, who needs them? They're just one with the ground. Feed them to the maggots. Let Christ fill you. Holy shit, dude. This is actually like just despicable. You shouldn't, don't remember the dead, guys. You should forget all about him, okay? You're like, well, I do miss my mom, but it's time to get over it. Yeah, she died yesterday. Okay, it's been a whole 24 hours. Time to forget. All right, my mom? What? Who? I thought I'm an orphan. I don't... Just being biblical, okay?
So we should forget about the dead. Now, this sounds insensitive to some cultures. I get that. But as Christians...
To some cultures? I'm pretty sure that sounds offensive to any human being with an ounce of empathy and to any human being who has ever lost a loved one or knows somebody who lost a loved one.
There's no benefit in dwelling on it. So should we as Christians celebrate Halloween, or in other words, is it possible that we can glorify God while celebrating Halloween? My conviction is no. I personally don't think that you cannot celebrate something while still partaking in the celebration. If I believe that...
Actually, that's not even true from a Christian perspective. So, for example, when I was little, we wouldn't do any of the like demonic stuff, right? Because Christians tend to think that anything that's spooky or creepy is therefore demonic. It's kind of one and the same for them. It's very stupid, I know, but a lot of the times I wouldn't do, like, I never did trick-or-treating. I wouldn't dress up as anything that was like evil or anything, but like there were still events. I remember like there were church events where they'd have moon bounces and like all the friends were hanging out. They'd have like candy and shit. So like there is still a way that you can have fun on Halloween while not doing like the more demonic aspects. And I'm saying demonic in quotes. But yeah, I feel really bad for your kids, you know? Dad, it's almost Halloween. Can we make a jack-o'-lantern? Do you know what jack-o'-lanterns were originally made for, Timmy? Originally, jack-o'-lanterns were set up as a way to ward off the evil spirits. That's actually true. Okay, you want to participate in the demonic witchcraft known as Wicca? Also commonly referred to as Halloween? Get to your room, Timmy. I want you to pray the Lord's Prayer all night.
That getting drunk is wrong, then I'm not going to go enter a drinking competition to see if I can drink more than everybody else. Likewise, if I believe that Halloween is a celebration of the dead...
No, you're like saying I don't believe in drinking alcohol, so I won't go to the bar and not drink, even if my friend is having a birthday party at the bar. That's like what you're saying.
Then I'm not going to go join in on the celebration. But again, that's my own personal conviction. Another thing to consider is the spiritual warfare that occurs. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, in the month of October, I just feel constricted. And then especially on Halloween.
He's doing it. He is the stereotype of Christians that I always talk about. He is that guy. He's the guy who's like, I feel the spooky knot in my tummy, therefore it means God is convicting me. Just like, I have a tummy ache. Yeah, it could have been the week-old sushi that I ate. Or it could be that it is the month of October. I think it might be the God reminding me that it's spooky time. Everybody run.
But for whatever reason, in the month of October, I just feel constricted. And then especially on Halloween. People posing as evil spirits just doesn't sit right with me. People decorating their lawn with death doesn't sit right with me. As Christians, we're supposed to...
Christians are obsessed with death, by the way. It's like their biggest thing. All right? The whole concept of Jesus is all about how he died and then rose again. The whole concept of Christianity is pretty much contingent on when you die, you go on to a better place and all that shit. You guys are obsessed with death. Without death, Christianity would be pointless.
Supposed to represent life, not death. And on top of that, what if you go up to somebody's door and they're a witch, or they pray, cursings over the food? I know that's random and probably not realistic, but still.
What if I go to knock at the door, okay, and first of all, I'm not dressed as a dinosaur, so I'm already really exposed, and then the local neighborhood witch opens the door, and you see her go, abracadabra, ushkamala, and she casts an evil spell onto the candy. Next thing I know, I eat it, I pass out, I go unconscious, and I cannot wake until I'm kissed by a beautiful, handsome prince, okay? Who knows? Who knows the power of Satan? This is like just telling yourself scaries. This is like just telling yourself scary scaries, if you will, and then just getting scared. Like you're frightening yourself. Man, that takes skill.
It goes back to the verse that says that all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. Can you celebrate Halloween? Sure. Is it beneficial? I don't think so. A lot of the actions on Halloween are neutral, but the holiday as a whole is not glorifying God.
You heard it here, everybody. Halloween is a carnal sin, and you might have an evil curse cast on you from the neighborhood witch. How do we know Christianity is the real religion? Oh man, I keep thinking I'm going to be done, then I see another one that I really want to watch.
Real religion, 100%. Now, I could go on and on listing evidence and arguments and such like that, but what it always boils down to is Jesus. And to the best of my recollection, I'm pretty sure that most major world religions believe that Jesus was a good teacher, a wise teacher, good moral teacher, all stuff along those lines. But the two that are closest to Christianity would be Judaism and Islam. Now, the Jews believe that Jesus died via crucifixion. The Muslims, they don't believe that. They believe that Jesus died elsewhere later in life, and there's different theories. Islam just teaches that Jesus appeared to have died on the cross, but that he didn't. But Christianity, of course, teaches that Jesus died in the crucifixion process, but then was resurrected some 3 days later. So how do we know which is real? Well, Jesus historically died by crucifixion, so that knocks out Islam. And Jews don't believe that Jesus resurrected, so the question is, did Jesus resurrect? And the best piece of evidence, in my opinion,
is the
for
Bible.
Jesus' resurrection, historically, is that the disciples were willing to die for their belief that they had seen the resurrected Jesus.
Okay, by this logic, then Islam is correct because Muslims were willing to fly airplanes into the Twin Towers. I'm going to get down on my knees and bow to Allah now. Allah is actually the real religion, and 9/11 proves it. Like this is identical logic. This is so stupid. Second of all, he goes into this idea of Jesus dying and being crucified. It is my understanding that there's decent evidence that there was a man named Jesus Christ who was crucified, which is completely believable because crucifixion was pretty common back then. What's not believable is that man then rose from the dead. That's like a huge leap above, okay? Believing that somebody died, okay, we know people die. Believing that somebody rose from the dead? Never seen that happen before. Please get back to me. This guy seems like he's operating in good faith, but he's just so incredibly wrong. I feel like he hasn't thought this stuff through very much. I don't know how you don't think that through. Whenever people say like, oh, they died for their religion, the first thing I think of is 9/11. Well, this is the guy who tried to respond and debunk me. And then we also learned about how Christianity is actually real because you just have to ignore Islam. We learned how dark humor is sinful because God is totally cool with killing babies. He just would prefer you don't joke about it. And finally, we learned that Halloween is not good because the neighborhood witch could cast a spell on your lollipops. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely a Christian now. Jesus has entered me from behind